Hey everyone. A while back, I did a free webinar about kickstarting your year in the studio and doing some goal setting. And for those of you who weren't there, I wanted to post the recording for you. So here it is.
So, welcome everyone to Kickstarting Your 2015 in the Studio. This is my first webinar of 2015, and just wanted to say a big Happy New Year's to everybody. I wanted to get everyone together today and do a free webinar to talk about the goal setting process. And I think it's very important to have goals. If we don't set goals, we're not going to get anywhere. But there's a lot more to it. Just setting a goal isn't as easy as just writing something down on a piece of paper. Not if you really want to achieve it, and not if your goal is a big goal or a complex goal, like often occurs with music. So I go through a reflection process every year myself, where I look back on my previous year, and then I do a lot of planning for my upcoming year. And I take a lot of time out of my schedule to plan where I want to go and what I want to achieve. And I've also had the good fortune in my life to have gone through a lot of training and personal development courses that relate in some way to goal setting. I've done courses all the way from, Franklin Covey, very official kind of corporate courses, all the way down to personal one-on-one coaching with authors. For example, I worked in a 2-year coaching program with Les Hewitt, the author of The Power of Focus. That was a really amazing program. And I've always been an avid student of personal development and just how you can get more out of life. I always have more things that I want to accomplish than it seems there is time for a day in the day. And I feel that organizing my time is one of the best things I can invest into. And that's really what this webinar is about. It's about planning out your year so that you can wind up your 2015 looking back on this past year and feel good about what you've accomplished. Feel like you had direction throughout the year, feel like you had purpose, feel like the things that you decided to do over your year are connected with kind of an inner sense of fulfillment, and you're not just doing things randomly, or that you're not doing things because you're trying to please other people, or you're not doing things because you think you should. You're doing things because you truly want to do them, and they light you up. And that's really the place that I hope for you guys all to be in when you're creating music, because music that comes from that place is powerful music. And I want to support you guys in doing that. Let's get started with the content. I've told you guys a little bit about the concept of this webinar, and I want to just give you a few ideas around why I created it. So I created it because when I go forwards into a new year, I go through a reflection process, like I mentioned, looking back on my previous year. And my reflection process that I do with myself and with my students looks a little something like this. I ask myself a series of questions. Said, did I accomplish my musical goals? And of course, that would be impossible if I didn't even have musical goals. So maybe a better question is, did I have musical goals? And if you don't, then that's probably going to be your first and most powerful step you can take through this process. Did I have a lot of unfinished music? That's another one of my tests. Is I know a lot of people are great starters and but are easily bored or easily stuck, and nobody hears that track that we almost finished. That track does nothing for our name, our brand, our reputation. It does nothing for our dance floor. That song that you almost finished. And in a lot of producers that I work with have tens or even hundreds of almost finished or partially finished songs, and very few in the way of finished. So I'd like you guys to reflect back on what amount of unfinished music you have that you started in the last year. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the ways that you could have been prevented from finishing that music, and then some ways around that in this session, because a lot of us can be, we can be great starters, but terrible finishers. This is one of the biggest questions: is do you feel that you have untapped potential? And a lot of us get into writing music because we have good taste in music. We hear a track and we can appreciate every little detail about it. We can hear that tune and we can fully embrace the beauty of that piece of music. But then when we go to write our own music, it somehow falls short. And we see this big gap in between the music that we want to be writing and where we're currently at. So if you feel that you have untapped potential, then that means you're in the right place here today, because we're talking about in this session how to really start to tap into your potential. And I have a lot of ideas related to the personal development training that I've done and the coaching that I've done with my students about how you guys can really amp up your game for this upcoming year. Could you benefit from more focus with your music? Distraction and continuous partial attention and like ADD with music is one of the big, I would say probably one of the largest top 3 barriers to finishing music. And it can be a really good reason why you have a lot of unfinished music or why you don't feel you've tapped into your full potential. And focus is a big topic. Focus is something that really enables you to develop mastery in something, but it's something that is scarce and fleeting in this day and age when so many things are competing for our attention and so many things out there detract from our ability to focus. We're going to go into that in depth in this session. Do you want more inspiration and creative energy? I don't know if there's a single person kicking around here that could say no to that. We all want to be inspired and feeling energetic and creatively flowing all the time. And I've really found and studied a whole bunch of things that both detract from or add to that. As you guys know, if anybody's followed my journey over the last couple of years, you'll know I have a course called Creative Mastery. And that's really the focus of that entire course. It's a 5-week course with hours and hours of content. And it pulls on my journey for the past 10 years through cultivating more creative energy and inspiration. And I share in that 5-week kind of action-packed crash course, I share a lot of the lessons that I've learned about the things that will allow you to be inspired and to build your creative energy and to sustain your creative energy. I'm going to share a lot of those with you today. And finally, would you like to set yourself up for a year where you'll feel far more fulfilled with your music? And that's the overarching intention for today. Is I want to set you guys up for a upcoming year where at the end of the year you're going to be able to look back and say, I'm happy with what I accomplished. I feel good about the music that I wrote. I set some goals. I accomplished those goals. And I feel like I have forward momentum now that I can build on. That is my hope and my wish and my desire for all of you, is to stand back at the end of 2015, look back on your year and say yes to those things. And that is, that's something that I'm really stoked about when I hear people that are excited about what they've accomplished and feeling good about it. Okay, so that brings us to our topics for today. So you will have seen from the page on my site, what we're going to cover. And let's just quickly review those. So we're going to be covering goal setting the right way, how to set yourself up for success. Now setting goals can be as simple as writing, I want to get better at music down on a piece of paper. But if you do that, are you likely to achieve it? No. There's a variety of ways that you can set yourself up to achieve a goal, to set the right types of goals. And I'm going to share those with you, share my thoughts on those. Then the next thing that we are going to be covering is making your game plan. So you can set all the goals you want in the world, but if you don't have a plan, then they're just pie in the sky ideas. What actually puts rubber to the road is a plan. So we're going to be talking about how to create a 2015 game plan for your music. We're going to talk about what skills you need to achieve, what skills you need to build to achieve success, and what areas of yourself you need to invest into. I've broken down the process of creating electronic music, or music in general, into a variety of areas. And until you break something down, it's hard to achieve. It's hard to conceive and look at. And so I've really taken some time and broken down the various areas of music production and the various things that you need to get good at and invest into and learn as artists. And we're going to be covering those. We talked about creative energy and focus. We're definitely going to be talking about a lot of the things that I can share with you about how to amp up your creative energy and how to keep your focus. Those are big topics. And then there are things that will get in the way of you writing the music that you want to write. There are some common roadblocks, and bringing awareness to those is a great way to make sure that you won't get sidelined by them. So we're going to call out some of the most common things that I see in my coaching practice when I work with students. And I'm going to talk to you guys about how to spot those before they stop you in your tracks, how to build awareness around them, and some strategies as far as how to make sure that you don't get caught by them. And the other thing that I'm going to do today is these areas of yourself that I'm going to recommend that you invest into, I'm going to give you some thoughts and ideas around different types of training that you can do in those areas. Some of them are my courses. Some of them are courses that other people have developed that I think are really good. Some of them are YouTube channels and free resources. And I'm going to walk you guys through some of the ways that I've learned and show you the path that you could take if you want to develop knowledge in a certain area that we're going to talk about. So that brings us to goal setting. So goal setting could be a very simple or could be a very complicated topic, I suppose you could say. And it all depends on how you go about it. I want to show you guys how to set your goals so that you're actually going to achieve them, to set realistic goals that are high quality goals. So the first thing is before you even go into the goal setting process, I would highly suggest that you take some time out on your own to reflect really deeply on what you want to achieve and why. The why is a big part. If you don't have a really compelling and powerful why behind your goal, it's unlikely that you're going to have the energy behind it to be able to push through and achieve it if the going gets rough. So I always start out my goal setting process by taking time out. Ideally, I go away somewhere, away from my habitual natural environment. You know, if I stay in the area where I live, maybe it's going to a different coffee shop from the one that I normally go to. Maybe it's taking a different journal with me and writing with a different pen. Or maybe it's more extreme and I take a trip somewhere and I go and I rent a cottage in the woods and I take, 3 or 4 days or a weekend out, time on my own with no phone and no internet connectivity, just to think about really what I want to do and tap in for that year. And that ensures that the goals that you're going to be setting are going to be much more authentic goals. That brings us to setting goals for you and you alone. There's a lot of goals that people set that are goals that they may or may not realize at the time, but they're actually not their own goals. We're, as human beings, influenced by the people around us. And when we see somebody else who is, for example, writing the music that we want to write, if they're writing music and we want to sound like that or that good, then a lot of times we look at that person and what they're doing and we try and set goals down a similar path. And that doesn't always work because your goals have to be aligned with you as an individual, and every person is quite different. The other thing that can happen with goals is sometimes we set goals for external validation. We set goals for an external purpose versus an internal purpose. So, for example, we may have a desire for admiration, a desire for recognition, a desire for love, and maybe we let that influence the goals that we set. A common place where that happens is with parents and children, and parents wanting the child to go down a certain career path or follow in their footsteps, and the child decides that they want to do something else, and it causes problems. And then maybe in order to retain harmony within that important relationship with your family, you decide maybe unconsciously or subconsciously to set goals that are in alignment with what those other people want because you don't want to rock the boat. Whereas that will cost you your ultimate fulfillment and happiness. And so really check in. A lot of people set goals and they said, I want to get a song this year that charts in Beatport. Well, why? And maybe that is an authentic goal for you. Maybe that's truly coming from the heart and that's where you want to go, but unlikely. Usually goals like that, I want to chart on Beatport. I want to get a track in the top 10. If it was just you in the universe, would anybody care? Would it matter? No. Really, that goal is entirely set around external recognition and validation, which is a very temporary and unsustainable source of artistic fulfillment. Now, if you instead said, I want to write a track that I'm deeply fulfilled with and feel like I did my best with, and I want to release that on my own timetable, my own schedule, and really feel like I've polished it to the best of my ability and put it out into the world for people to enjoy and to be able to watch as people enjoy the music that I've written. That would be a much more authentic goal. And in all likelihood, that track may chart in Beatport, and that may be a side effect, but it's not the bullseye. It's not your aim. So I urge you guys some caution when you're setting your goals and setting them really for you and not setting them based on any type of validation or external recognition from other people. We talked about this a little bit already, projecting into the future. and looking back on your year, set goals from there. That's a really good place. I like to kind of future pace myself, set myself at that point in the future, maybe a year, maybe 5 years down the road, maybe a quarter, maybe only 3 months down the road, and look back on myself and say, what do I want to have achieved by now? And that's a kind of a cool place. And the better you can get yourself into an emotional place of feeling fulfilled and feeling happy with your progress, and then get into that state and then look back on your year and see how that impacts your intentions. I like that process of projecting into the future. One of the things I really recommend with goal setting is simplicity and focus. Too many goals in too many areas, or too many goals in one area, leads to overwhelm. And if you overwhelm yourself, that's a great way to set yourself up for failure. It's a great way to set yourself up for stress. And it's a great way to set yourself up to make sure you're not enjoying the journey. And I know that a lot of people feel a sense of pressure. They feel oh, I'm 25 now, and there's people who are 20 who are out touring the world, or I'm 35 now, and there's people who are 25 who are out touring the world and charting on Beatport and doing all this stuff, and it creates this artificial sense of pressure. Time is running out. I need to jam my plate with all these goals. I need to learn sound design, mixing, mastering. I need to learn DJing. I need to learn how to promote myself as an artist. I need to get management. I need to do all these things, and I would urge you guys to take a breath and to slow down. And if you really want to achieve traction, if you really want to achieve a goal to an extent of true mastery, you're really going to need to narrow your focus. So simplicity when it comes to your goal setting process, I think, is also really good. One of my coaches is a gentleman named Philip McKernan, who is a personal development speaker and an author. And he has a program out there called Everest. And in his Everest program, he gets you to set one single goal, one single overarching goal. And I don't necessarily believe that we need to do that ourselves as musicians, but I think that the narrower your goal is, or the narrower your set of goals is, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to achieve that. Okay, SMART goals. Some of you will have heard that terminology before. SMART means specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And it's, without getting too anal retentive, it's a way of organizing our goals to set better quality goals. So if you're talking about a goal and you say, I want to get better at music, is that specific? No. Is it measurable? No. Is it achievable? Maybe. Is it realistic? Probably not, because you have no way of measuring it. Is it timely? No, because you haven't said when you want to achieve it by. So the SMART process, cheesy acronyms aside, is actually a powerful process for setting your goals. And it's kind of a reality check, a little quality check that you can do as you're setting your goals. And I'm going to walk you through how I would do that in a moment here. Setting a time is so important. Setting a time for anything. There was a study that they did, and they found that individuals who said, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work out, were far less likely to do it than an individual who said, I'm going to go to the gym between 10 and 11 tomorrow morning, and I'm going to do a leg workout consisting of leg press, split squats, lunges, and calf raises, and some stretching. That is a specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely goal. And that it has a much higher likelihood of being achieved than somebody who just says, I want to go to the gym and work out, or I want to get more fit. I want to get healthier. Those are goals that probably aren't going to get done. Those are low quality goals. The other thing that is good is to put a little bit of a fire under your butt and make your goals public. It can be good and it can be bad to do this. So it is a bit of an individual preference. I wouldn't involve anybody that you know other than yourself in your goal setting process, because that's a great way to ensure that your goals are just being set by you and you alone. So goal set on your own, but once you set your goals, it can be a powerful process to declare them to the world. And that could be to your family, it could be to your partner, to your friends, it could be on Facebook or on your social media or a blog post somewhere, but to declare your goals publicly, because we find as individuals, we're the easiest people to let down. You are the easiest person for yourself to let down. If you say, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, or I'm going to write a new track in the next 30 days, and then you don't do it and you haven't told anybody, you don't look bad to anyone except yourself. And that's easy. But if you tell a record label or a whole bunch of your friends or you're following on SoundCloud that you're going to have a new track ready for download at the end of January, then you have other people that are tied in with that goal. And there's two sides to it. One is you have public accountability. You look bad if you don't achieve that goal, and that's a powerful motivator. But you also have the love and the support of people around you that want to see you succeed. Now, if you've done your job of surrounding yourself with the right people, and that's another topic we're going to talk about later in the webinar, if you've done your job of setting yourself up with the right people who literally, honestly rejoice in your success, then now you also have the support and the energy of those people. And the more you talk about that goal with them, the more you energize that goal, the more you discuss it on a daily basis, talk about your progress towards it, the more progress you will experience. So I think that it can be very powerful to talk about your intentions and talk about your goals. And that's why at the beginning of every webinar that I teach, I talk about my intentions and my goals and energize those with my words and get you guys excited about them. That's part of the process. Now we get to talk about this year's game plan. So one of the most important things to do when you have a set of goals, so we're at the point now where you've done your reflection, you've set a whole bunch of goals or maybe a smaller subset of goals that you're happy about, you feel like they're authentic, you feel like they're coming from you, you've reality checked them using the SMART system. Now it's time to put rubber to the road and you need to break those goals, which are oftentimes annual goals. That's a long time. A year is a long time. It might feel like it flies by, but when you're in it, it's a long, long, long time. And there's no way that you're going to do something like, for example, get better at sound design just by thinking get better at sound design. You're going to need to break that down. You're going to need to quantify it. You're going to need to parse it down into small chunks because you can't do get better at sound design. You can't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to do get better at sound design right now. That is not a thing. What you can do is a small bite-sized granular task. So what you could do is read the manual for X for Record Serum Synth. You could do that. That is a small achievable task that you could do in a couple of hours. So that's what I would highly recommend you do, is to start the process of breaking down your big overarching annual goals into small achievable tasks. And if you want a system and a book specifically for how to do that, the best thing I've ever seen is a book called Getting Things Done. And it's a whole system that was developed. Forget the author's name at this moment, but it's something that I read and implemented in my life a few years ago, and it's one of the most powerful things that I've done. It's called Getting Things Done. It helps you to deal with overwhelm of having a lot of things on your plate, and it helps you to organize by breaking things that are actually projects down into small achievable tasks. And then there's also software that can help you do this. There's an application available for OS X called Things, which is part of Getting Things Done that you can pick up. There's also online software that can be really good, like Basecamp or a program called Asana. Asana is my personal favorite, Asana, Asana. And we use that for all of our project management and planning at Warp Academy, at vespers.ca, and I use it in my personal life as well. It has a corresponding iPhone app or OS X app. And yeah, it's really amazing. So putting your tasks, breaking them down, and if need be, using software. If you're paper-based, you can do that too. That's cool. You don't need to use software. So yeah, you can't do a project. You can only do a task. So that's where this process of breaking things down is so essential. So how granular do you get with things? So I break down my annual game plan into these areas, into quarters, into months, into weeks, and then into days. So I'll sit down and I'll take my annual goals and I'll first parse those out into quarters. And I'm going to show you guys an example of that in a minute or so here. And then when I'm in the quarter, and what I mean by quarters is calendar quarters. So quarter one is January, February, March. Quarter two is April, May, June, and so on. And I'll take a look at quarter one goals for my 2015. And then I'll break that down into the months. So I've got January, what do I want to accomplish there? I've got February, and I've got March. And then now we're in January. I'll take a look at my game plan for January and I'll say, okay, how do I break that down into the weeks? We've got 4 weeks inside of January. Now we're getting a little bit more granular. Now I can say more specific things. I can break things into my weeks. And then what I do is I break down and I actually have a plan for every single day. So I have a written plan. I handwrite it in a journal. I just have a paper journal. All of my other stuff is in software, my week plans, month plans, quarters. But when it comes to my day plan, I actually handwrite it. And I spend time every week looking at and planning my week ahead. And then I spend every day the night before planning my next day. I don't wait until I wake up in the morning. I plan my day the night before. I set the intention of what I want to achieve with my time before I go to bed. And when I wake up in the morning, my plan's just sitting there on my desk in my office, and I just start doing. It's amazing how much more effective you are at achieving things when you don't need to think about it. I use the example of a gym a lot because it's something that a lot of people can relate to. If you walk into a gym with no plan, is it likely that you're going to achieve as much success as somebody who walks into the gym who's got a plan written by a personal trainer, knows exactly what exercises, what weights, what number of reps, how much rest in between, how much water to drink, how much protein to consume, all that stuff? The person with the written plan that's been guided by an expert is the person who's going to achieve far more success and traction and progress than the person who goes in with no game plan and just shoots from the hip. The person who goes in with no game plan and shoots from the hip also gets some things done, but nowhere near as much as the person with a plan. And so here's my motto is plan your work and work your plan. I always think about that. And I think, if I wake up in a day and I haven't written my day plan from the day before, I just feel scattered, unfocused. And at the end of the day, I usually feel kind of a sense of not having accomplished much and maybe some stress about getting behind. Whereas when I have a nicely written day plan, the day seems to go my way. At the end of the day, I look back on it and say, yeah, I killed it today. It worked. Everything on my list was aligned with my greater purpose. It was aligned with my week, with my month, with my year, with my quarter. And so plan your work and work your plan. So here's a good guideline for things. I would spend 20% of your time planning and 80% of your time working your plan, as opposed to what most people do, which is 100% of their time working without a plan and achieving random things that just occur to them in the moment, usually with an element of scatteredness or ADD, and hopping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And at the end of the year, they haven't really ended the year with a sense of fulfillment because they haven't taken the time to plan out the year and to connect their granular daily tasks with an overarching goal. That's really what we're doing here is we're connecting the small tasks that you can do in an hour or in 2 hours. We're connecting them up to a game plan for a week, to a game plan for a month, to a game plan for a quarter, to a game plan for a year, to a game plan for your life. And so when you have that really strong connection between things, then you're going to achieve a lot of great things. I just got a note here from Pauline. Thank you very much. Says the author of Getting Things Done is David Allen. And it's awesome. Thank you very much, Pauline, for that. It's a fantastic book, and I would highly recommend it. Josh, you said, can you repeat the name of the author and Getting Things Done? There we go. Yep, we're good. So yeah, look for it on. Should be able to get it easy on Amazon or be able to get it as an audiobook. So Getting Things Done by David Allen. All right. So basically, the next thing we want to make sure that we're doing is that you're not under planning and overworking. I highly suggest that you set aside a time in your schedule where you're going to plan your upcoming week and then your upcoming days. So for me, I do my planning on the last day of the week before the week starts. I do my planning on Sunday. So usually Sunday morning where I'm feeling really sharp, I'll go off to another environment. I like to get out of my house. I like to go to a coffee shop or a restaurant or something like that. Or if it's nice outside in the summer, go outside. And I like to set aside somewhere between 2 and 4 hours to really think about what I want to achieve in the upcoming week. And that's where I reference and I look at my month plans and I look at my quarter plans and my year plan. And that's where I check in to see, okay, where am I at in this process? and what have I accomplished so far, what's coming up, and then I transcribe those down into my week plan. And I organize those ideally in a set of priorities. Because if you get busy in the week or something sidelines you, you have some type of priority that pops up for work, or you twist your ankle and you got to go to the hospital and you take a day off, or you get sick, or, family comes into town unexpected, you need to entertain them. All kinds of life can happen. That's the saying, life happens. And if life happens and you need to push something, you need to deprioritize something, you need to make sure that you're not going to push the thing that's the most important. So if you prioritize your things and give them a weight, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then you have a system of what gets pushed to the next week if you need to move something. And that way the most important things stay at the top, and it gives you a focus. So I really like that process, and sitting there and looking at your goals, because every time you sit and you look at your goals, you also energize them. The more of your intention and your energy, like, we are powerful beings, man. If you spend time writing and looking at your goals, talking about your goals, you are going to get them. There is no way that you can't achieve what you want to achieve when you're investing your energy towards them. So that's where that planning process comes in. It's not just to prioritize and plan the time. It's also time where you're investing your energy in visualizing the achievement of those goals. And I like to give myself a nice amount of uninterrupted time to do that. I don't take my phone with me. I'm not using the internet. I'm just spending time on my own, really checking in and taking the time to devise what I'm going to do with my upcoming week. Then I'll also, on the evening of the night before, create my day plan. So usually sometime after dinner, before I get tired, before I get sleepy, I'm going to make my day plan for the next day. And I've just built that as a habit. And I do it pretty much every day. There's the odd day where it slips and I don't do it, but it's a habit for me, like brushing my teeth. If I don't make my day plan, I just feel like something's off. And that's the power of habit. And when you build yourself into a routine like that, then it feels weird when you don't do it. But it takes a while to build that habit. So I would highly encourage all of you to spend 30 to 60 days doing day plans, planning your work the next day, and see what type of progress you achieve in that time and compare that to what you've historically achieved in the past. And I bet you'll see a marked improvement. So let's take an example here. We've talked about a lot of theory. Now let's show you guys actually how I would approach this. So we're going to take an example goal. Here's an example week goal. I want to, in 2015, improve my sound design skills. Is that likely to happen? Possibly, if you're focusing on that every day. Is it likely to happen to the extent and degree and quality that it could happen if you put a little bit more time into the goal? No. So let's take a look at that and flip it on its head. Okay, let's take a look at this in a stronger sense. So this is how I would phrase that. I would get really specific. So I want to learn subtractive, frequency modulation, additive, and granular synthesis at a level where I can build my own patches and easily replicate deep house. Again, I'm being specific here about a genre, because even genres are very, very different. If you're writing neurofunk drum and bass versus minimal techno, the sounds that you're going to be using and the skills and the synths and the tools are going to be different. Maybe not wildly different, but they're going to be different. And the more you can narrow your focus and be specific about a goal, the better. So where I can build my own patches and easily replicate deep house style sounds of the caliber you'd find in sample packs. So that's just giving me a benchmark. I might compare the weight and the punch and the clarity of some of the sounds that I'm making with some sample packs. Now, for some people, this is not a realistic goal. So that's where we need to bring ourselves back to SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Now, for somebody who's been producing for 5 or 6 years and has been investing into themselves, this would probably be a realistic goal. If you just picked up a copy of Ableton Live and you've never touched a synthesizer before, then this would be a completely unrealistic goal for a year. Even if you worked 40 hours a week, it's unlikely that you would be able to build enough skill set in this area to build sounds of the caliber that sound designers are creating in sample packs. So that's where the R, the realistic reality check portion of the SMART goal comes in. So this is an example of how I would set a strong goal. So now let's take a look at how I would begin breaking down that goal. So we've got a series of quarters in the year. We've got quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. So one way that you could go about this is you could break down the goal and split out those 4 types of synthesis that you really wanted to master into the 4 quarters. Okay, so let's say that I decide to focus quarter 1 on subtractive synthesis, which is the most rudimentary form of synthesis. So I might break that down and say, well, how am I going to learn subtractive synthesis? There's a lot of different ways to learn it. This might be one of the things that I decide to do. I'm going to take an online course in subtractive synthesis. I'm going to watch 50 tutorials on patch creation on YouTube. I'm going to focus on one specific synth to narrow my focus and reduce overwhelm. Instead of trying to learn subtractive synthesis in Massive and Gladiator and Analog, I'm instead just going to focus on Ableton's built-in analog synth. Now, you could replace that with anything. It could be Native Instruments Massive if you don't use Ableton Live. But I'm going to say it would be good to learn one synth deeply. One of my favorite sound designers and a guy that I take lessons from personally, one of my sound design teachers, Ray Al Cardinal, he spent a whole summer making every sound in all of his music with absinthe from Native Instruments. He said he really wanted to learn absinthe, so he took an entire summer and he said, the only synthesizer I'm going to use in any of my music is absinthe. I have to use it for everything. And you want to know how good he was with absinthe by the end of the summer? Freaking ninja level. So that was kind of cool. It's, if you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to be able to make the same momentum as if you narrow your focus. So that's powerful. And then I want to say, part of my annual goal was building my own patches that I'm happy with. So I'm going to say create 20 of my own patches, and maybe those are 20 patches that are connected with the genre Deep House. Okay. And then we want to be actually using those patches in music. So another goal that I might set for that quarter is I want to write one track using only analog for sound design. So that's an example of some ways that I would break up a quarter. Now notice we're not super specific yet. This is still kind of general, but this is a great way to break up the quarter because inside the quarter, we have weeks and we have months. So we can easily distribute these goals amongst those going forwards once we've broken things down into this logical level. So let's talk about breaking down the goal even further. This is what we're going to do in month 1. So let's call this January. So in January, I'm going to take an online course in subtractive synthesis. That's one of my bullet points. It's one of my things from my quarter plan. Now, I'm going to break down that specific target. Okay. I'm also going to watch 15 tutorials on patch creation. I'm also going to make 5 patches. So I'm breaking these down into smaller chunks. So now let's take just one of those. Now we're going to get down to a week level. And this is what I would do on my Sunday where I'm planning. I would pick one of those things. So I'm going to research online courses in subtractive synthesis. I can't just sign up for a course. That's not something you can do. Where's the course going to come from? Whose course do I take? Do I like this person? Do they know what they're talking about? Is it within my budget? You need to know all of those things. So a task that you can do in 2 or 3 hours is research online courses in subtractive synthesis. Okay, once you've decided on a course, then enroll in that course. Then schedule time to complete that course. So I'm going to schedule 4 hours each week of the month, put it in my calendar to take the course and to practice. So we know just taking a course isn't good enough. You actually have to practice what you're learning. You need to do it yourself. Then I'm going to research and select 4 YouTube channels focused on subtractive synthesis patch creation. Okay, YouTube is a massive universe of stuff. It's just a huge clusterfuck of content. Some of it is good, most of it is terrible, but there's diamonds in the rough and there's gems that are in there, but it requires a lot of sifting. So if you're going to find quality content on YouTube, and it does exist, you're going to need to sift through and you're going to need to find the people out there that know what they're talking about. So that's where you need to do a research process and figure out who those people are, subscribe to their channels, and ideally you're going to bookmark those channels so you can come back to those on a regular basis. One of the things that I do inside of my Google Chrome browser is I have a sophisticated bookmarking system with folders and subfolders inside of those sometimes. So I have a folder called, music learning. I have a subfolder inside of that called sound design. I have a subfolder inside of that called YouTube channels. And I'm going to share with you guys later in the webinar some of my favorite YouTube channels that I've vetted and people that I follow and listen to. And there's not very many of them. So another thing I might do is watch one tutorial from each of those 4 channels in this week. Okay. And then from that knowledge that I've gained, actually put it into practice during that 4-hour period I've set aside to take the course and practice, and make my very first patch inside of Analog. So notice that I'm not overwhelming myself. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tasks that are there. Incidentally, there are also 7 days in the week. Coincidence? I think not. So I would try to only give yourself one substantial thing to do in a day, because we all have other things that happen. We need to keep our fitness up. We need to eat. We need to socialize. We need to work. There's all these other things that are vying for our time in our day. And if you try and pack 7 things into one day, it's a great way to set yourself up for frustration and overwhelm and stress, because you're not going to be able to invest very much time in them. You're going to be switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and you're just going to be scattered. So I try and break these out and having one significant thing towards my goal every day. I don't like skipping days, because I feel that when you build momentum, if you have momentum and you're investing into that every single day, it's much more likely to become a habit. So if you say instead, I'm going to research a course on Monday, but then on Friday night, I'm going to do all the other stuff. Well, you have like 4 days in between there where you've done nothing towards your goal and likely haven't been thinking about it. Whereas if you're doing one of these things every day for an hour or 2 hours, then it's always going to be present in your mind, and you're building a habit of working towards an overarching goal. You're building a habit of spending time on your life's highest intentions. And if you can do that as a human being, man, you've got life figured out. Okay. I told you I was going to tell you about some of the key areas to invest into for yourself, and that I've broken down these different areas of music production. So we ask ourselves the question, what key skills do we need to build as musicians and artists to achieve success? Okay. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to build mastery of our chosen tool. And in this case, if you're an electronic musician, it's likely that you're using a DAW or digital audio workstation, of which Ableton Live is one. Ableton Live is not the only digital audio workstation out there. There are lots of amazing sets of tools. Ableton Live is the one that I have chosen and I use exclusively, even though in the past I've used Reason, Logic, Cubase, Pro Tools, things like that. I think that it's very important to select one. It doesn't matter if it's Ableton Live, as long as you pick one that you're going to learn at a deep level. So why pick just one? A DAW has an extremely high learning curve. It's like learning how to fly a 747 jet. It's got so many parameters, so many things it can do. It's in version 9 now, and there's complexity that's been added to it with every single release, every single version. If you say, well, I really want to learn Ableton Live because I heard it's good for performing, but then I want to learn Cubase because I've heard that it's really good for pitch correction, and then I want to learn Logic because everybody says you should mix in Logic, and then I want to learn Pro Tools because everybody says you should comp and record in Pro Tools, then you're going to be a lot like a musician who plays guitar and saxophone and keyboard and flute. You're probably going to be really mediocre at all 4 of those things and not great at any single one. So I firmly believe that no matter what DAW you choose, that pretty much all of the major DAWs out there are capable of making awesome music. It's the person behind them that makes it good or bad, mediocre or incredible. So I really believe in investing time into mastering your tools. And the first one is mastering the environment you're working in, which is your audio workstation. Okay. Sound design is a big one. Now, do you have to know sound design to be able to write music? Maybe not at the beginning. You can use sample packs. You can use synth presets. But you're always going to have a glass ceiling on your development as an artist, because not only are other people going to be able to spot that you're using canned sounds, and I do all the time, you're going to be really limited in your range of your sonic palette. You might hear a sound in your head, and instead of just being able to create it out of thin air using a synth or using some type of resampling technique and layering audio samples, you now need to go and find that sound. And it's impossible to find a sound that is in your head if you're relying on things that other people have created. You're never going to find an exact match. You might find something close. You might find something that's good enough, but good enough is different from great. And The other thing is you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money buying synth patches and sample packs, where if you had just invested into your skills as a sound designer and understand that in order to really create truly unique music and to build your own sound, you're going to need to know these skills, then you're going to be much further ahead. Sound design is a huge journey. And at the beginning, you just need to learn how to use a synthesizer. What's an envelope? What's a square wave? What's a saw wave? What does that sound like? What's an oscillator? How do I use oscillators together? What's phase cancellation? What's an LFO? What's a modulation source? What's a modulation destination? You need to learn the language of synthesis and sound design. And then once you know that stuff and it's kind of second nature to you, you know the language, then you need to work on building the more advanced skills, which is the more advanced level sound design stuff that you can get into, and resampling to audio and doing all that fun stuff, layering sounds up and really making cool complex sounds. The next skill is musical theory. Now, again, it's like sound design. It is possible to get by without much in the background of musical theory. You can write a song, and a lot of music has kind of just one single bass note in it. Maybe it goes up an octave or goes up a fifth or a seventh or something like that. But it's still it lacks complexity, and that music can work really well on the dance floor. Or you could be writing something that's so minimal it doesn't really have tonality in it, so you don't really need much music theory. But for the most part, for most of us, writing anything that has chords or a chord progression or a chord change, or understanding the relationship of what scales you might be able to play over top of a chord. Let's say you have a D major seventh chord that is sustained. What scale could you play over top of that if you have synth pads sustaining a chord, and then you have a synth lead that you're playing over top in a melody? And there's going to be wrong notes, there's going to be right notes, there's going to be avoid notes to hold over a sustained chord, and you're not going to know any of that stuff unless you invest into theory. Now, do you need to go to the Conservatory of Music? Do you need to do a doctorate or a master's degree in music? No, not even close. But a rudimentary understanding of the language of music is worthwhile. In the same way that, somebody could come into the Ableton Live environment and not really know what's going on, and they could say, well, I want this sound to come out of the right speaker, and then I want this sound to be louder. Well, that technically you could tell somebody who uses Ableton Live really well to do that, and they could do it. But really what they'd be thinking in their head is, I need to move this sound to a pan position of R32, and I need to increase the amplitude or a little bit of compression and saturation on this sound to increase its presence in the mix. There's a different language when you understand something behind a concept. So music theory is one of those things that I think is really lacking in the field of electronic musicians. There are some people who have a background in acoustic music that have then come over and they write electronic music, and you hear their stuff and it's fantastic. A great example of that is the group Odessa, kind of a future hip hop group from Seattle, or Flume, both of which you've seen just take the scene by storm over the past year. And the reason why they have is they have a deep understanding of music theory, and their music has emotion in it. And I think that that's an essential skill to build on. And it can be daunting at first, but you just have to do what I did with the goal, is you have to break it down to an achievable level. There's courses out there in music theory that are a few hours long that you can go, and you can know more about music theory than 90% of electronic musicians just by taking like a 1-month course over a few hours. Song arrangement and writing is another skill. You can have the best sound design, the best chord progression in the world, but if it's not arranged properly and it just doesn't flow, you're going to lose people. You're going to lose interest. People aren't going to watch it or listen to it. The dance floor isn't going to react to it. And there is an underlying code to music that if you study song structure and arrangement, you will learn at a deep level. Mixing. Mixing is not something that you get somebody else to do. Mixing is highly, highly personal, and I really like the process of investing into your skills as mix engineers. Anybody who's been following what I've been up to with Jake Perrine and Warp Academy, Jake Perrine is our mixing engineer at Warp Academy, and he's done a few really next level courses in mixing and in mastering, and that's a skill set that a lot of people actually who are even out there releasing music on Beatport and iTunes and things like that still could benefit from a lot of training in mixing. A good example of that is a group that a lot of us might know, the Glitch Mob. Very big, high-profile group. They play festivals all over the world. They've got a few albums out. They're killing it. They had their most recent album mixed by somebody else. They had it mixed by Uberzone. And the reason for that is because Uberzone is somebody who just has an incredible ear and an incredible caliber of mixing technique and skill, and was able to show them things inside of their mixes that they wouldn't have figured out on their own. So I think mixing is a huge journey. It's something that I've been investing into, and I continue to invest into over the past 10 years. And I think that it's one of those key skills that we need to invest into as artists. You can have a track that is brilliant with sound design, embodies a lot of great musical theory practices, is written excellently and arranged excellently, but if it's mixed poorly, then it's not going to have that sparkle and that clarity and that punch and that depth that a properly mixed track does. So mixing is an essential skill, and I would invest into learning that yourself. Mastering is a bit of a different animal. Mastering, I don't necessarily believe that you should be doing your own mastering, especially if you're new to it. But I do believe that you should understand the basics of mastering. You should understand what a mastering engineer is doing. You should understand how the mastering process impacts your music, because one of the most critical things that happens when your music is mastered is a big old limiter gets placed on the master bus. And when that happens, your music can change substantially. And all these different things pop out that you may not have noticed in the initial process. So I really believe firmly in doing quick masters, basic masters on your own music, putting a mastering chain on, seeing how it changes your mix, going back, using the information you've gained about the clarity of your mix with a limiter on, go back, fix your mix, make changes. It'll make you a much better mix engineer. Man, the amount of information, the amount of improvement in my skill of mixing that I've had by doing some of my own mastering has been incredible. It just gives you this wonderful feedback. So understanding the basics of mastering is truly essential. Live performance. This might not apply for everybody, but I'm assuming that most people here that are writing music also want to be playing it out, performing, gigging, actually, seeing crowds, seeing the music, hearing the music. So live performance is another skill. There's some musicians out there who are wonderful producers, but tragic performers. And that just comes from an overinvestment into the other skills and an underinvestment into live performance. And then there's some people who are the other way around. They kind of are much more rudimentary in writing their own music, but they're fantastic performers. And they do very well in that area, but they don't play much of their own music. So I think it's an integral part to being a well-rounded artist. The music business and marketing is another huge area. Is when you are a musician who's looking to build a career in this industry, you are self-employed and you are a business. You're an entity that requires marketing. Nobody's going to do it for you at the beginning. You need to be able to understand how to do that yourself. And when you do get to the point of maybe hiring a team or an agent or a manager, then you're going to need to understand enough about the business to converse with them and understand their ideas, give them a feeling for where you want to go. And the better understanding you have of the music business and how to market yourself as an artist and the landscape out there in the industry, the better equipped you're going to be to develop your career. And finally, what I call the inner game, your level of confidence, your focus, and your energy. And those are things that you need to have in place. And I put it at the bottom because they're your foundation. If you're going out and building a synth patch, but you're second guessing yourself at every turn because you have low confidence in your abilities and you have a lack of focus, then that patch is likely to wind up in the trash or never used in a track. So this forms the foundation. Same thing with energy. If you're chronically tired or you're sick all the time, or you're just feeling in a low vibe and in a bad mindset, are you going to be able to sit there in the studio and have the level of focus and determination it's going to take to create music? Unlikely. So your personal energy and your health and your mental and emotional focus and your confidence is going to be key to your success as a as a musician. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to open things up for some questions. But just before I do, I want to give you guys some ideas around places that you can go to get deeper training in these areas. So I'm going to take 5 minutes and just run you through some recommendations that I have. And then we're going to do a question and answer period. And then we're going to go back into a bit more of the presentation that I have later. So anybody who does have a question, please go ahead and put your hands up now. Anybody who wants to know how to put your hand up in the control panel, you just press the hand that has the little green up arrow on it and your hand will shoot up. And I'll call on you in a couple minutes. But yeah, we've just covered a lot of different areas that I think are essential to go into as musicians. All of these areas that you should invest into. And if this list seems overwhelming, just understand that you don't need to do all of these things in the first year. You can spread these out over a multi-year journey. Maybe this year you just decide to focus on music theory, or maybe this year you decide just to focus on sound design. And then you keep that narrow focus. So let's say that you guys want some more information about things that you can do in all of these various areas. Now, as you guys know, this is my business. I run a training company, vespers.ca, and then we also have a fantastic team of people that we've accumulated under one banner. Many of them are Ableton Live certified trainers over at Warp Academy. And we've been really, really busy building out a huge curriculum of courses, many of which apply to these things. So I'm going to guide you through some of my recommendations as far as your education path for this upcoming year. And then after that, I'm also going to show you guys some free avenues and some YouTube channels that I also think are very good. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what I do, and there's lots of other ways to learn. So don't take this as you have to do all these courses. It would be great if you want to learn and continue your journey with me, but I'm not the only place you can go, and Warp Academy is not the only place you can go. There's other mentors and trainers and sites out there, but I'm going to show you the ones that I can speak to. So if you want to master Ableton Live and you're fairly fresh to the platform, then the course I would recommend is Ableton Live 9 Jumpstart at Warp Academy by my good friend and Warp Academy co-founder, Jake Perrine. Jake Perrine is an Ableton Live certified trainer. He's written 3 books on Ableton Live. He's one of the world's top authorities on Ableton Live. He was an instructor at the Art Institute in Seattle, where he led the electronic music production program for 10 years. He is a seasoned veteran, and he built this program where in 30 days, in 1 month, you can learn more or less 90% of Ableton Live. And he goes through step by step, and he uses the context of writing a song. It's an incredible program. It's been recognized as DJ Tech Tools as one of the top 5 ways to learn Ableton Live this year. And yeah, I highly suggest you guys check that out. Now, some people don't like a linear path. Some people just have an idea or a question and they want to get a really quick answer. And we built an entirely separate tool for that. It was actually one of the initial ideas that inspired Warp Academy. Is I really like the concept of YouTube, because YouTube is a search engine, right? So I can say, okay, well, I'm kind of stuck. I'm writing a patch in math, for example, Native Instruments Massive, but I don't know how to get the glide to activate. I can't get it to glide in portamento between notes. And so I go to YouTube and I type that in, and I get these answers. I get tutorials that people have done. It's incredible. But it has a downside in that on YouTube, there's no quality control. And on YouTube, a lot of times somebody posts a video and they may not actually know what they're talking about. Occasionally they do, but there's a lot of crap up on YouTube. And the other thing is, let's say you do find a good video on YouTube, but it's like 15 minutes or an hour long and it covers a whole bunch of different topics, and you just want a bite-sized answer. You're writing music, you want to get in, you want to get out, you want something that's going to give you exactly what you need to know with an on-screen video example in like less than 5 minutes. That's what the Warp Academy tutorial library is for. We created Warp Academy, the tutorial library, similar to YouTube, where you've got a big search bar. You can type in virtually anything related to Ableton Live, and the answers that you're going to get are all from experienced Ableton trainers that we've vetted ourselves. Most of them are Ableton Live certified trainers, and all of the videos are less than 5 minutes. They're on one single topic, and they're all HD. They're all super high quality. Boom, you get in, you get your question answered, you get back to writing music. So that's a huge resource for you guys if you don't want to take a linear multi-hour course and you just want to use that as a quick kind of like FAQ database of video answers. If you're new to synthesis and you're just starting to learn down your journey of sound design, then the Synthesis 101 course is something that I've created for you guys. I oftentimes teach at an intermediate to advanced level of synthesis, and I was starting to host trainings and webinars and things like that. And I had some students that I was overwhelming with information. They didn't know what a modulation source was yet, and they didn't know what a square wave sounded like or what pulse width was, or they didn't know the differences between granular wavetable additive FM synthesis. They didn't know what was relevant to them, and it was all kind of too high level and overwhelming. So I created Synthesis 101 as an entry level course. It's less than an hour long. It includes an Ableton Live template that comes with a whole bunch of patches where I basically use those inside of a real song. And it covers from the most rudimentary, I've never seen a synthesizer before in my life, and gets you up to speed so you can be pretty adept with an average synthesizer that's a subtractive synth in less than an hour. And that would be a good course for you if you've never touched a synth before, or if you're fairly new to synthesis and you want to build a strong foundation. Now, let's say that you want to build on sound design skills that you already have. You already understand the basics of synthesis. We've got the Synthesis and Sound Design Masterclass at vespers.ca, which is taught by Miyagi. Miyagi is one of my longtime teachers and mentors, and I've been lucky enough to bring him on board as a business partner. So he works with me now with Warp Academy and on vespers.ca. And this is, I think, our largest course. It's over 50 videos, over 10 hours of content, and he goes hyper in depth into all the major categories of synthesis, builds tons of patches. Miyagi, if you guys don't know, is a sound designer professionally. He's worked with F Expansion on their Decam Synth Squad set, which is an infamous bundle of synths. He's worked with Camel Audio. He's worked with Cable Guys on the Curve 2 synth. He's built his own sound packs. So this is an opportunity for you guys to get inside the head of a real, legit industry professional sound designer and watch how he makes his magic. So that course might be up your alley if you're at an intermediate level and you want to get up to an advanced level. That's a fantastic course for you. If you're looking for something bass specific, I have a course called Blitz Bass that I've just done. This is my newest course. I've just completed it fresh. It's on vespers.ca and it's on Warp Academy, and it's entirely oriented towards bass. And I have a lot of stuff in there about 808 subs, hip hop, trap. We cover deep house sound design. We cover a lot of future bass sound design that would be applicable for neuro hop, glitch hop, dubstep, things like that. We do big content on some of the newest, most cutting edge tools, like the X4 Records Serum Synth. We talk a lot about Massive and a lot of the secret ninja tricks that a lot of people don't know about Massive. And I do practical examples of sound design. And we deal with a lot of stuff like sidechaining, getting your mix really clear, how to get your subs to play right with your kick and get that clarity without mud that you want in your mixdown process. We also do a lot of work with some advanced multi-band stuff. So I would say if you're in an intermediate level or an advanced level with bass, this is a really, really good course for you. It's about 5 hours, tons of content in there, and that's my freshest course that I've done. It's all done in Ableton Live 9 as well. If you're looking to kind of amp up your game and learn the basics of music theory, one of our other Warp Academy trainers is Michael Miracle. Michael Miracle worked with Jake Perrine a lot and did an album a while ago, and Michael is a brilliant pianist. And his music is very emotional, very moving, has beautiful chords in it. It's thick, it's lush. He's a fantastic musician, so it was a real honor to be able to get him on board to do this music theory course. The music theory course starts at the very, very basics. You don't need to know anything about music theory to get started. It's not going to go over your head. It's a fairly short course. It's not going to take you months to do. It gets you in, gets you out, 3 hours of content, and it teaches you all the fundamentals of music theory to the point where, as an electronic musician, that's the core of really what you need to know. And it's a great course. I would highly recommend it if you want to go in depth into music theory. We talked earlier about mixing and how that is an essential skill. Jake Perrine has a mixing and mastering course, which is on vespers.ca. Many of you might know some artists named Kamananda, Future Primitive. Jake has done mixdown work and mastering work on albums for them. Jake has also done just a career's worth of mixdown and mastering work out of professional studios where he lives on Orcas Island and in Seattle. So he's got this course where he drops all of his secrets and knowledge, and he mixes actually a track that I did quite a while ago, a track that I did in the very first Audio Weapons program. Jake does a mixdown, and you get the whole project file for that. Jake's done a more recent course on mixing on Warp Academy called Mix Lab. And what he did is he took students' tracks and he did a full before and after 3-hour mix on each one. So he's got a whole bunch of content in there where he's taken these student submissions and he talks about the theory of mixing, walks you through what he's doing step by step, and does an entire mix down on every single one of these tracks. So that's a great one to watch for mixing at a more advanced level, because you actually get to see him working over and over and over again on different tracks of different genres. And that's a course that he's actually still taking submissions for. So if you wanted to submit one of your own tracks, get Jake to mix it, and get the video afterwards, you can do that through this course. So that one's on Warp Academy. It's called Mix Lab. On the live performance side of things, we have a brand new course that just launched on DJing with our own certified trainers, Isaac Kotek and Ian Gallagher. And they're both out there in the industry doing what they teach. And we wanted to have a course on all of the knowledge that you need to be able to set up a DJ set inside of Ableton Live and perform with it. That's one of the beautiful things I like about Ableton Live. And one of the reasons I've chosen it as my DAW is because I can produce and perform in the same platform. And I should have mentioned as well that there's course previews on every single one of these pages. So even if you guys go there and it's not the right time for you to do the course, watch the previews. We have full-length free previews, 3 of them at least, on each course page. And you can watch those as free tutorials and get a lot of the knowledge there too. So definitely worth going out and checking these various courses. All right. I think this is the last one we have. And these are 2 courses of mine. And these are, I'm calling them advanced workflow courses. These are ones where I actually, Audio Weapons, I actually write a piece of music start to finish. And so it's kind of more an amalgamation of all of these things. You know, it's sound design, it's songwriting, it's mixing, it's all of those things all together, because you get to see my process of actually writing a song. So that one's really useful. There's lots of tips and tricks in there, keyboard shortcuts, workflow cheats, and pro tips inside of Ableton Live that you can see by watching Audio Weapons. And then a more recent course that I've done that's available on vespers.ca and Warp Academy is called Pimp My Track. And that's where I did something kind of similar to Jake, where I took 9 projects and I just did everything I possibly could to them to transform them. In some cases that required a lot of mixing, but I actually went deeper and I replaced sounds, did sound design, rearranged things. I had a full license to edit these tracks from the students, and you get to see a full recording of each one of those in a variety of genres of me working with these pieces of music. So that can be a cool. And again, there's course previews up there, and you can go check them out on the video page. Okay. I also told you I was going to share with you my top picks for YouTube channels, and then we're going to do our question and answer period. So YouTube channels. YouTube, I love it. Obviously, you guys know I'm on YouTube. I built my entire community and most of the work that I'm doing now from YouTube. YouTube is excellent. It's a search engine. You can get incredible video content from really passionate, informed people. The downside to YouTube is anybody can publish on YouTube. It's free. A lot of people do publish on YouTube, maybe before they should. And there's a lot of stuff that people are excited about sharing, and it's just not somebody that you should be learning from. One thing I always ask myself is, who is this person who's teaching me something? Do I like where they're at? Do they have any results to show for what they're teaching me? Or are they just spouting knowledge, and am I letting that go into my brain? So you really want to pay attention to who you're learning from. And there are some absolute experts out there on YouTube who are doing tons of tutorials for free. So I've sifted these down into a short list for you of channels. My criteria for these people is that they must be experts. The sounds that they're producing in their videos actually have to be usable, legit sounds. And they have to be actively releasing their own music. I don't listen to people who are theorists who don't do what they teach. So somebody could be teaching me all about synthesis and sound design, but if they haven't released a track in the last 5 years, I don't want to listen to what they have to say. So each one of these people follows these criteria. Now, there are a lot of other channels, but these are my top picks. And again, I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too much stuff. So without further ado, here are my YouTube heroes. Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill teaches inside of Ableton Live. He's got a very active training business. He releases more music than almost anybody I've ever seen in my life. He's a total weapon, and he's one of the most advanced teachers that I've ever seen in my life. Don't go listen to his channel expecting to understand everything he's doing or follow everything as quickly as he does it. He's a total ninja. But the cool thing about video is you can rewind, you can watch it again. He's definitely an advanced level trainer. Same thing with Tom Cosm. Tom Cosm is a Ableton Live certified trainer. He was one of the first Ableton Live certified trainers. He's killer. He does big long videos where he just writes a track. So does Mr. Bill, and you just get to watch what he's doing. Rad stuff there. Again, he works at a very advanced level. He doesn't speak very slowly, so just make sure you're ready for that pace of stuff when you go to his channel. Il Gates is a massive training phenomenon, one of my very good friends and an incredible musician and performer. He also speaks to a lot of the things on the soft side of things, the creative side of things, the mental game, the emotional game of writing music. And he builds a lot of great templates and packs and stuff like that. So Il Gates has a YouTube channel, highly worth checking out. For those of you who maybe haven't seen it, I have an interview that I just did with Il Gates that just went live for free on my YouTube channel, which you should definitely check out. And last but not least is Seamless. The R is silent. Seamless does not teach inside of Ableton Live. He teaches inside of FL Studio, but he is one of the best sound designers that I've seen out there on YouTube. Probably the best, I would say, out there on YouTube. He walks you through tons of different ways of making music. His style is more, drum and bass and glitch hop and neuro and stuff like that. Some electro stuff. So he does stuff inside of those genres. But man, is he ever good! And he does live streams all the time and posts a lot of content to YouTube. He's also a professional sound designer. I believe he was one of the beta testers for the Serum synth, and he's also done a sample pack on Black Octopus Sound that is a highly recommended pack as well. Ooh, and I have one more. I'm putting this one last because I don't know if they're actively doing videos at this point in time, but a YouTube channel called Human Workshop Offices, and specifically a guy named Dirk Koistra. Dirk is one of my sound design teachers. He's a professional sound designer, builds sample packs, does work for video and things like that. His own music is incredible. He releases on a variety of labels under the pseudonym Oscillator. And his YouTube channel is it's a collective of people, I believe, that release under Human Workshop Offices. But go and take a look at some of their stuff. They have some videos up there that are a bit older that are fantastic. And if you see new videos from them, check them out. Now, some of you might be asking me right now, can you just send me the links of all of these? And with respect, no. I want you guys to understand that if you're going to get out there and start looking for music and looking for music education online, you guys need to get good at using this beautiful little thing called Google. So no, I'm not going to give you the URLs. These people are easy to find. I want you guys to get used to doing your own research. I've given you the names. The channels are very, very, very easy to find. Go out there, start building your own database, bookmark them, subscribe to them. And there's other channels out there aside from these, but these are my top picks. So we're going to continue now with the section on creative energy and focus. So the intention with this section is to discuss how to keep your creative energy and focus at a maximum. And why is that important? So creative energy is a lot like your battery pack. If your batteries are low, then it doesn't matter how capable you are or what skills you have or how focused you are. You have nothing driving the machine that is you as a musician. Then we all know that there are some people who have a ton of creative energy, but there's a complete inability to focus it. And it doesn't matter necessarily how much creative energy you have if you can't direct it with intention. So there's people out there that are just visionaries. They always have ideas, and it's always a new idea every day, and they never seem to achieve anything. It's because they lack focus. So you really need to have both. You need to have the battery pack, you need to have the energy, and then you need to have the intention. You need to have the focus. And both of those things will contribute to your success, not only in music, but your success in anything else you choose to pursue as fellow human beings on this planet. So I want to share a quote with you guys, and this is from a book that is a core book to my teaching and something that's really impacted me personally. It's a book called The Power of Full Engagement. And that quote is, every one of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors has an energy consequence, for better or for worse. The ultimate measure of our lives is not how much time we spend on the planet, but rather how much energy we invest in the time that we have. The premise of this book and the training we do each year with thousands of clients is simple enough. Performance, health, and happiness are grounded in the skillful management of energy. That's something maybe worth rereading a couple of times, because that's a really profound quote. It's not how much time you have, it's the energy that you invest in the time that you have, and how you direct that energy, and directing that energy with intention. And that's really what we're talking about here. So this is going to be a little teaser from my course called Creative Mastery. And some of you here will have already taken that course. Others will be retaking it with me this year. And it's a course that I wanted to offer timed with the beginning of the year, because it is all about creating the type of music that you want to create, keeping your energy levels high, cultivating a high level of focus. It's entirely about effectively personal development for musicians. We don't work on the hard skills. We work on the soft skills. So we don't work on anything to do with Ableton Live. We don't work on synthesis, sound design, mixing, mastering, any of that stuff. We work on the softer side of things. We work on your level of confidence, your propensity to compare yourself with others, your level of fulfillment, your health, your level of inspiration and creativity, and things like that. And so what you're going to see in the next section here are little snippets from that course and some of the key points that I cover. And one of the things that we looked at in this previous slide here was the skillful management of energy. So if you're going to be skillfully managing your energy, and if every one of your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors has an energy consequence for better or for worse, I first want to point out what types of things, behaviors, circumstances have an energy consequence for the worse, because you first want to bring awareness to what those things are so you can spot them, because a lot of people are doing these behaviors unconsciously and you might not know that they're depleting your energy. And then the other thing you want to be able to do is you want to minimize them. Okay, so let's go over what they are. And this isn't an exhaustive list of every single one, but these are the big ones that I've noticed over a long time. Smoking, that should be a given. Drinking alcohol. Drugs, and that includes recreational drugs as well as pharmaceutical drugs, over-the-counter drugs, aspirin even, things like that. All of those have a negative depleting energy consequence. Bad foods. This isn't a course on nutrition, although I could deliver an entire course on nutrition. It's another area of passion of mine, and if I wasn't a music educator, I would probably choose to be a naturopath. My interest in energy and how to amplify and maximize that, and peak performance and health, has caused me to do a lot of research into various areas. But I'll just restrict my comments here to say we all know what bad foods are. There's a lot of knowledge out there. Watch some documentaries, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, Knives Over Forks or Forks Over Knives, Food Matters. There's a lot of great free documentaries on foods that explain bad food, what it does to you, why you should avoid it. Things like non-organic meats that are filled with hormones and antibiotics, things like deep fried foods, diets that are high in high fructose corn syrup, fast foods, a lot of wheat, things like that. There's a lot of bad food out there. Unfortunately, it's readily available, and a lot of us have a pattern of consuming it on the regular, and that has an absolute negative, depletive effect on your creative energy when it comes to your music. Caffeine abuse. This is a hot topic because I know a lot of people love coffee. I also love coffee. Coffee is fantastic, but the overuse of it, i.e. every day or multiple times per day, or the abuse of other forms of caffeine such as energy drinks or 5-hour energy or upper tablets or anything like that, you are effectively borrowing energy from tomorrow and burning it today. You cannot do that in a sustainable fashion. It is impossible. If you don't believe me, take a look at a book called Adrenal Fatigue, 21st Century Stress Syndrome. And it was written by a PhD who is a medical doctor who did a whole bunch of research into that area and has treated patients for low-level and high-level adrenal fatigue. And one of the highest culprits is the abuse of caffeine. One of the commitments I made to myself in the first bit of 2015 here is to completely give up coffee and alcohol. I never hit them very hard to begin with. I would have a couple of, social drinks here and there, and I would have, a couple of coffees a week. But I just really found that they were weighing on my energy, and there was a very small upside for a fairly significant downside. And I decided that for my music and to invest into myself for the first month of 2015, I was just going to experiment with giving them up completely. And I can tell you since then, I've been drinking green tea. I've been drinking a lot of water, and I've been feeling incredibly focused, and I've been feeling like I have tons more energy for my music and my creative endeavors. So uh, many of you may not be interested in or willing to give up some of these things, and that's okay. I would go through brief periods of experimenting with reducing them or eliminating them for a brief period of time and just doing a test for yourself and see how you feel. Your own body will tell you what the best move is for you. TV is a big one. TV can be relaxing, and I think that it's it's something that's pervasive throughout our culture. TV can be used to educate, so it's not like I'm anti-TV, but a lot of people spend far too much time in front of the television. And I've recently read research that has proven that long-term exposure to television is correlated with anxiety and low-level depression, which makes a lot of sense because I watch people closely, and I see certain people that watch a lot of TV, and I kind of just observe how they are in their lives, and they're not especially happy people or fired up, motivated people. Um, when was the last time you looked back on your last year and say, hey, you remember that great time that we watched Terminator 3? I'll never forget that. No, it never happens. I never remember the time that I watched a TV show. I remember the time that I went out on a hike with my friends, or I remember the time I played a DJ gig, or I remember the time that I went camping and took a trip out in nature. I remember those things. I don't remember the time I was sitting on my ass in front of a TV. So monitor your TV usage. The other thing that is really important to understand about TV or video games, for that matter, I kind of loop those in with TV, is that they destroy your ability to focus. And we've talked a lot on this webinar about how important it is for you to be able to direct and focus your energy. Here is how TV destroys your focus. If you watch any type of modernly produced show, I'm a video editor, so I really pay attention to this stuff. Look at the amount of cuts between different footage, different scenes that they have per minute. It's astronomical, especially in video games and in action movies. Your senses are being totally overstimulated. Your explosions, loud sounds, action, movement on the screen, all this stuff. And that saturates your senses to the point where now if you're in an environment where you don't have that level of stimulation, you miss it and you have an inability to focus. And this adds up over time and can be significant over a longer period of time. So basically, I really advocate doing things that are going to build your level of focus versus take away from them. And television, especially action stuff and video games, definitely take away from your ability to focus. Mindless internet surfing, I call it computer face. As electronic musicians, we spend enough time in front of a computer without spending time mindlessly watching just random YouTube blooper videos or surfing around on Facebook and looking at what other people are up to. And yeah, a buddy of mine coined the term computer face. And when you've been sitting in front of a computer for too long, you just kind of zone out, and it can get very addicting. And so I'm very aware of the fact that I spend a lot of time in front of a computer already for my work, for my business, for my music. I try not to spend time in front of the computer when I don't absolutely need to. And so mindless internet surfing is something I try and reduce to a minimum, if not eliminate entirely. A sedentary lifestyle. That can definitely knock back your creative energy. So if you are sitting at a desk for the most part and you don't do something like go to the gym or run or do yoga or hike or something like that outdoors, then you have a pretty sedentary lifestyle. And if you're not using it like a muscle, it gets smaller. So your ability to generate energy, your ability to breathe deeply, your body's usage of oxygen all changes with a sedentary lifestyle. Whereas when you're active on a regular basis, you're going to have a lot more to give. You're going to have a lot more capacity. Stress. A lot of us are very overwhelmed and burdened with our managing our lives. A lot of the common themes I've heard from people so far is, where do you find the time? We have very busy lives living in the places that we do. We have a lot of things vying for our time, text messages coming in, friends, opportunities, shows, dinner parties, family, job, working overtime at jobs, new projects, donating time to all kinds of different organizations. There's so many things that the average person does that stress is a result. And if you're not doing something to mitigate or manage your stress, then that can really start to eat away at your level of creative energy. Stress, they call the silent killer. Stress is the cause of disease. Stress can cause your body to become acidic and become a suitable host for diseases. It can cause all kinds of health problems and anxiety and things like that. So monitoring your stress level, and that's why you hear me speaking a lot about reducing the number of goals to a core set that's really aligned with your greater purpose. The more things you take on, the higher your stress level is going to be. So I really advocate taking one step at a time, really focusing on one thing at a time, and rather than spreading yourself too thin, which just leads to overwhelm. Draining relationships. We all know we have these. I think it's a useful process to divide the people in your life into two things: motors and anchors. Anchors drag you down, motors lift you up. And it's good to do a periodic evaluation or audit of the people that you're spending a lot of your time with. And I like to spend time with people that I've chosen very intentionally. We all have friends and people that we meet because we have common interests, or we're in school together, or they're coworkers, but they're not people that we've necessarily intentionally chosen. And it's those types of people that you really have to take a look at and be like, do I feel good or bad after hanging out with this person? When I spend time with this person, are they complaining and venting about their lives and speaking about negative stuff? Or are they speaking about possibility and doing things to invest into themselves? Do they have a passion? Are they doing something that has a greater purpose with their life? And align yourself with people like that. Because people like that, you will associate with, you'll share energy with those people. They will influence you. And I would much rather be influenced by a network of people that I find supportive and that I find inspiring versus people that are just around me by default. So draining relationships is a big one. The last one, and arguably one of the most important, is negative self-talk. So we have a voice that's going on in the back of our heads that's narrating our lives constantly. And it's saying a lot of different things. And sometimes we tune it out, but it's good to listen to it to monitor what it's saying sometimes. You could be writing a song and you're like one bar into writing a song, and maybe that voice is saying, this sucks, you're no good, you're never going to release a piece of music in your life. And that's going on in the background. And if you let that persist, then it's going to really drain your tank for your creative energy, and it's going to stop you from finishing music. There's a really incredible musician out there. I'm not going to name his name, but he's somebody that I was following for a while, and I really respected what he was doing. He made some of the most incredible music I've ever heard in my life. Last year, he decided to stop making music because he succumbed to an overwhelming amount of negative self-talk. He didn't think that any of his music was good. He was comparing himself to other music producers, many of whom I think he was better than, and diminishing his enjoyment of his music. And he let that negative self-talk go for so long, unmonitored and unchecked, that it overwhelmed him to the point where he gave up and he stopped writing music. I really sincerely hope that he will get back on his feet and he'll realize how good he was at what he did, and that he'll come back and join us. But it was a real shame to see somebody do that, and somebody who was doing such good work and just didn't find the help that he needed and the confidence and the love in himself to recognize that what he was doing was good. So negative self-talk is definitely one to keep an eye on. It's one of my coaches, Philip McKernan, calls it the stealth bomber. It's the hidden stealth bomber that can fly under the radar. And if we don't notice that it's there, it can destroy us. So now that I've depressed you all with all these things that you now might feel you need to give up or reduce, or all these things you're like, oh shit, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm like, how am I going to write music? All is not lost. I want to talk about positive energy rituals. So the key here is not necessarily to remove all of those behaviors, because I don't think that's realistic. If we look back on these common energy depleting activities, a lot of us, including myself, do some of these things from time to time. I watch TV sometimes. I get stressed out sometimes. I have some people that are occasionally draining relationships. I have abused caffeine before. I have eaten bad food. You know, I've done most of the other things on this list as well. I was a bartender for years, and I really like alcohol, so making fancy cocktails is fine. I like my wine, but the key is to moderate them, and rather than focusing on giving these things up, to focus on adding in some of these new things. Because when you try and take something away, you end up feeling like you're ripped off somehow. You feel like you're really giving something up. So if I say you need to give up coffee, then you're just going to be feeling the sacrifice of that comfort that you would normally rely on. Whereas instead, if I say, well, drink as much coffee as you like, but add a green smoothie every day, then instead of removing something, you're actually adding something. And I find that's a much more powerful approach to take. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the things now that are positive energy rituals that I would highly suggest that you add into your routines. So here's a quote from the book that I talked about before, The Power of Full Engagement. Positive energy rituals, highly specific routines for managing energy, are the key to full engagement and sustained high performance. Okay. And that book, The Power of Full Engagement, they work with athletes, FBI hostage rescue teams, all levels of corporate and government agencies where high performance is absolutely essential. They work with Olympic athletes, champion golfers, and they found that adding in these positive energy rituals to manage your energy, that these are the keys to full engagement and sustained high performance. Because let's be honest, we can all drink a quadruple shot Americano and feel really productive for about 4 hours, but then we crash. So that isn't sustained high performance. And what I'm talking about here is sustained high performance over months and years. So what are these positive energy rituals? And again, this is not a complete list. We go much, much more into depth about this in my Creative Mastery course. But I'm going to share with you guys some of the core ones. The first one is hydration and nutrition. So it's eating right, and it's making sure that your body gets enough water. Dehydration is a chronic thing that I find the vast majority of people are dealing with on some level. You see, it's funny, I saw a picture a while ago from a study where they took a woman who looked like she was in her 50s, and she was chronically dehydrated, and they gave her the proper amount of water over 1 month, and they showed another picture of her, and she looked 10 years younger. It was absolutely incredible. We're made of water. I don't need to teach you guys that, but water plays an important role in flushing toxins out of our body, in helping us to stay alert, and also in suppressing hunger for bad food. So a lot of times when we think we're hungry, a lot of times we're actually thirsty. So one of the things I might do is if I feel like eating a big nasty meal or something, I'll drink a glass of water and then see how I feel after 20 minutes. And a lot of times it's just that I've been a little bit dehydrated and I'm not actually hungry. The other thing when it comes to water is the quality of your water. And if you're drinking city tap water, it's just jam-packed with anti-nutrients, with pollutants, with bad inorganic minerals, and more importantly, with chlorine and fluoride. In a lot of areas, some areas don't have fluoride in their water. A lot of the places throughout the United States do. Fluoride is toxic and damaging, so is chlorine. I'm not going to preach at you guys about that. Do your own research. And if you want more information about that, contact me. We talk about it again a lot in the Creative Mastery program. Nutrition. Again, this isn't a nutrition course, but a lot of us know how to eat well. It's not a matter of not knowing how to eat well, it's doing it. Same thing with going to the gym. Most of us know how to get to the gym and get our butts on a treadmill, but doing it is the hard part. It's simple, but it's not easy. So there's an abundance of blogs and ebooks out there all about nutrition and getting the right food for you. It's an area that I've studied a lot personally. And maybe at some point I will do a course on nutrition, but for now, I'm just going to say eat right, eat things that make you feel good. Those are primarily going to be like juices and smoothies, really good raw fruits and vegetables, organic food if you can get it, and then supplementing with whole food supplements and things like super herbs and superfoods and things like that that are going to help your body to get what it needs. Yeah, I'm not going to go into more detail on that because I could easily take up the rest of the afternoon just talking about nutrition. Exercise, exertion, and expansion versus rest, rejuvenation, and sleep. We call that the rhythm. So if you really want to have sustained high performance, you don't just rest all the time. You actually need to exert yourself to build capacity. And that's where exercise comes in. So whether it's getting outside and going for a walk in the day, something as simple and easy as that, or going to the gym or doing a yoga class, those are key to that routine of keeping your energy at a high. When you work out and you do some type of aerobic activity, you're getting oxygen throughout your entire body, which leads to alertness, which means you don't need as much caffeine if you want to feel energized. It leads to better sleep. The benefits just go on and on and on. But for me, what I do in my personal routine is I go to the gym and I do resistance training, and I also balance that out with doing yoga. So after the age of 25, if you're not doing some type of resistance training, you lose 0.5 pound of muscle every year through atrophy. So doing some type of resistance training is really important, whether that's like a form of power yoga or a spin class or going to the gym. I go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the mornings. It's the first thing I do. So I get it done and the day can't take over. If I wait till the evening to do it, then a lot of times it doesn't get done. And then I go to and I do a yoga class on Tuesday and Thursday and oftentimes Saturdays too. And that helps me balance out the yang energy, the fiery energy with the yin energy, the nourishing, cooling energy, and helping just on a basic level to you work out, you work your muscles, and then stretch. Stretching is really important, especially as you get older. Keeping your mobility and your balance is really important, and yoga is awesome for that. Emotional well-being. We talked a bit about negative self-talk earlier and how damaging that can be. Some of the things in here, minimizing your stress level. The tools that I've used are meditation and yoga. Or if you're not into those things, then just taking a walk outside. Don't take your phone with you. Go for a walk outside. Ideally, get somewhere in the forest or somewhere by water, a lake or the ocean, and just take some time to be with yourself. I think going for an hour walk every day is just incredible if you can get yourself to do that. The other piece about minimizing stress is focus and simplicity. The fewer things you can get on your plate, the better, the less stressed you're going to be, and the more enjoyment you're going to derive from these things that you're doing. Associating with supportive and positive people. We talked about anchors and motors earlier. Surround yourself with motors. Surround yourself with happy people, people that see the best in life, people that have an ability to look on the bright side, and people who are supportive of what you're doing versus people that might be jealous or threatened or negative about what you're doing. The last one is doing some form of personal development and actively engaging in positive self-talk. So personal development courses can range. There's a whole bunch of options out there. There's tons. And doing some type of course where it's about you, it's not about necessarily building a skill. It's about building a better relationship with yourself and working on you as a human being. That's the difference between personal development and, say, just working on like your synthesis skills. You are the person who makes all the decisions. You are part of the instrument of your setup. And I think the musicians out there who are doing everything possible to learn about how to DJ and how to build sounds and how to arrange tracks, but they're not actually doing anything to look after themselves, those are the ones that burn out or succumb to negative self-talk or get stuck in their tracks. But if you work on yourself, the benefits will be large spanning, and they'll go way far beyond just having an impact on your music. Okay, some keys to focus. We've talked a lot about focus, and we know that building a high level of focus is going to be really useful for us. So here are some suggestions and tips that I have for increasing your ability to focus. The first one is what I call creative sprinting. If you ever look at a marathon runner versus a sprinter, it's a night and day difference. The marathon runners look kind of small and frail and gaunt and hollowed out and depleted versus the sprinters, which typically look powerful and muscular and energetic and confident. It's just something that I've observed by looking at different forms of runners. And I think that the difference between a marathon and a sprint is a period of high energy output augmented by a period of downtime, where the finish line is actually in sight, versus a marathon where you never see the finish line for hours and hours and hours until the end, and you're constantly exerting, constantly exerting, constantly exerting with no downtime. And that has an impact. So if you think about your creative energy as a little being inside of you, do you want it running a marathon or do you want it doing sprints? And it's going to be much healthier if you do sprints. So for me, I tend to work in short cycles with frequent breaks in between to allow myself to just have a bit of rejuvenation. I tend to work, and I found 90-minute cycles work the best for me. So I'll come into the studio in the morning, I'll sit down, I'll have a definite goal that I want to achieve in that 90-minute session. Maybe it's building a kick drum, a really, really fat kick drum for a track. I'll give myself 90 minutes to do that. Maybe 90 minutes is too much for a kick, so I do a kick and a snare drum in that time. And then when I'm done that, I get up from the studio, put my computer to sleep, I go outside and I take a walk. Or maybe I go and get a tea, or maybe I make myself a smoothie, or maybe I go out on the deck and I do a little bit of yoga just to break up that routine. Then I come back in and I do another 90-minute cycle with a specific goal. Maybe at that point, I want to build a bit of a drum groove in the track and experiment with the drums that I've just created. And then another break. And I tend to do, 3 to 4 of those sprints in a day with those breaks in between. Maybe one of those breaks is for lunch or something like that. And I find that's a much better rhythm to get into versus coming into the studio, grabbing a coffee, not eating, and just slogging away for 8 hours. I find I get much, much more done using the sprinting process. Eliminating common distractions. If you want to be able to focus, you need to get rid of a lot of these distractions. Interruptions, cell phones, especially push notifications. In OS X, they have that growl system that pops up notifications. You can deactivate that. People. I live in a house that has roommates and I have a girlfriend that comes over and they know that when my studio door is closed, not to come and bother me. That's something I've set as an expectation with them. My cell phone never comes into the studio, ever. It's in the other room, it's off, and I can't even hear it buzzing. As soon as that cell phone buzzes, it disrupts my focus, and it takes me quite a while to get refocused to the same level of depth that I had before. Internet and social media temptation, that's a big one. You're on your computer to write music, right? Your computer's connected to the internet. If you're trying to build a following, a lot of times you have Facebook and YouTube and SoundCloud that you're keeping an eye on. Maybe you're communicating with a promoter and you're setting up a gig, so you're keeping an eye on your Facebook messages. You're sewering yourself for your ability to focus. So I have a rule, again, when I'm working on music, that all internet usage is off. I actually go and I physically unplug my router. Now, you may not want to do that. Maybe you use a piece of software. There's a couple of pieces of software that can help you. One of them is called Antisocial, and it blocks specific websites for a specific period of time. So you could use the Antisocial app to block Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and SoundCloud for 90 minutes, for example. That might be useful for you. Or you can use another app, which is called Freedom, which blocks all internet usage on your specific computer for a fixed period of time, and you cannot turn it off. So I live in a household where a couple of people are using the Wi-Fi, so unplugging the router isn't always an option for me because other people need to use it. So I use the app Freedom, and I just type in 90 minutes. It goes active, and even if I want to, I can't use the internet. It blocks it completely, and I can't deactivate the app, quit the app, anything. It's just lockout. So I find that really useful to avoid temptation to go online. Finding your power time is a big one. A lot of you who've been following me for a while will have heard me talk about power time before. Power time is that magical little thing where you're on your game. And everybody has a specific time of day where they just feel the best. They feel the most inspired, the most creative. For me, that time is the morning when I first wake up after about half an hour, getting myself just, getting my body kind of like warmed up. First thing I do when I wake up is I usually go outside, take a few breaths of fresh air. I drink a big glass of water, and I'll usually do a little bit of exercise, some yoga, sun salutations, or a bit of stretching or something like that. As soon as I feel alert, I'll go into my studio, and that's my power time. For the first 2-3 hours of the day, that's when I get the most done. Now, it's not the same for everybody. Some people's power time might be in the evening. Some people are night owls. But overwhelmingly, I find with most people, their most effective time is in the day. Because what happens over your day? You begin to be exposed to more and more and more of these depletive activities and things. Maybe you have a coffee and you come up, then you come down. You have less energy after than you did before. So, maybe you go out for lunch with a coworker and they just complain about their marriage the whole time. Or maybe you go out after work and you eat a cheeseburger and you just feel really heavy and tired. And then you come home and try and write music. Game over. So find when your power time is. And I would highly suggest trying out the morning. In my Creative Mastery program, we have a whole section about power time and how to find yours and how to structure it, and also talk about how to maximize your usage of time in that window. And there's a whole bunch of research that I present there that's really interesting as far as studies that were done on different people and when they're the most effective. And I also have a big section in the Creative Mastery course about how to become an earlier riser. Because a lot of you I know have jobs and other commitments, families, things like that. And maybe you wake up in the morning, you don't feel like you have any time in the morning. But if you can start waking up systematically earlier and being alert and energized in that period of time, you could write an entire album in a year just by carving out 1 hour in the morning for yourself. It's possible. The other thing is, I call it doing the work. It comes from the book by, what's the author's name? Stephen Pressfield, and it's called Do the Work. He also wrote Turning Pro and The War of Art. All three books are extremely good for you as musicians. He's a writer, and he wrote these books for other writers, but those three books also have direct parallels over to the field of writing music of any sort. So his books, Stephen Pressfield is the author, and the books are Do the Work, The War of Art, and Turning Pro. And in those books, one of the big concepts that he talks about is called doing the work. Doing the work is showing up. And that's where a lot of people fall down, is they just don't show up. They actually never set foot in the studio. They think about writing a track, but then something gets in the way and then they don't do it. But if you can consistently, every day, show up like it's work, like it's a job, like you'd get fired and put out on the street if you don't show up, and treat your music with that level of discipline, you will get incredible things done. So doing the work for me means showing up at scheduled times in my studio, whether I feel inspired or not, whether I feel like writing music or not, whether I feel like I'm going to get anything done that day or not. I show up like it's a job. And some days I make a lot more progress than others. Some days I make almost no progress at all. But showing up and doing the work is the most important thing you can do. Building your focus muscle. That's a big one. You guys have heard me talk about meditation before. Meditation, I will just share with you, is the single most important thing that I've ever done for my music. It's built my ability to focus. So we talked about a lot of things that kind of destroy our ability to focus. Cell phones, text messages, mobile devices, TV, action movies, lots of sensory stimulation, multitasking at work, things like that. Those all erode our ability to focus. Well, how do you fight back? You can't go to the gym and work out a focus muscle. The way that you fight back, the way that you maintain your focus and build your focus and strengthen your focus is through training your mind to bring it to a single point. And that is the entire purpose of meditation. So you may not vibe with meditation, but I would highly encourage you to take a look at it and try it out. It doesn't mean you need to become spiritual. It doesn't mean you need to be new age. Meditation is simply a mental workout that helps build your mind's ability to focus. That's all it is. You can go deeper into it. You can learn about chakras. You can become Buddhist. You can do whatever you want inside of that. Meditation, you don't need to do all those things. Meditation is simply a powerful practice where you build your mind's ability to focus. All right, and that brings us to our very last section, which are some common roadblocks. Okay, these guys are the things that will get in your way of producing music, and I want to call them out. These aren't all of them. These are just some of the biggest and most common ones. Impatience. Impatience is something that I notice playing a role in so many musicians, and it's something that holds people back, and oftentimes the musicians themselves that are suffering from this don't realize that and aren't aware of it. So the process of learning how to produce electronic music is complicated It's very multidisciplinary. We broke down all the different skills you guys need to be working on to become empowered and fulfilled and successful musicians. And that's a big list, right? That's a lot of things. So a lot of times people want to release their first track really, really quickly. They want to get out there, start playing gigs like yesterday. And I understand where that comes from. You know, a lot of people who are in this industry are driven. You're here because you're passionate. You're here because you have a lot of motivation. And that's a plus. But everything that has a plus side typically comes with a shadow side. And the shadow side of being very driven and being um, very achiever oriented is that it often is followed by impatience and an inability to just sit with doing a certain thing until it's at a point where you're proficient in it. So what happens with impatience and why it can destroy or roadblock your work is if you want to learn how to do sound design, you're going to invest years of training in that skill. But if you are so impatient to release your first track that you invest a month in sound design and then you move on to trying to learn mixing, you have no foundation to build on. You've learned sound design at a toddler level. You're not even walking yet. You're crawling along the ground, and you're trying to now learn the skill of mixing. And you're going to try and build a skill on top of a foundation that's crap. This is a huge topic that Kenny Werner talks about in that book that I mentioned called Effortless Mastery. And Effortless Mastery, a lot of his suggestions and his process there is about building patience with the process and practicing and practicing and practicing with a mind to only one thing. Is it mastered yet? Can I do this without thinking about it? Does this just flow naturally? And it takes an incredible amount of time to build that level of proficiency with a certain skill. And that's where you guys need to not just always be focusing on writing a track. I go into the studio. What am I doing? Writing a track. No, you need to be going into the studio with the intention of practicing with no overarching goal. You will not be writing a track. The only thing you're doing is practicing with patience. And so that's a big one. One of the other ones is overwhelm and fragmented focus. So if you have too many things on your plate that can include musical things and other things, then that's going to detract from your ability to do any one of them well. It's like I talked about earlier in the webinar, the musician who plays the trumpet and the French horn and the guitar and the piano and the drums. They're never going to be as good at any one of those instruments as a person who focuses on just one. So the more you can narrow your focus and take one step at a time, focus on one thing at a time, the more that's going to serve you. Low energy. So we talked about those things that detract from our creative energy and the things that are the positive energy rituals. If you have a balance in the negative direction, you're going to have sustained negative or low energy. And if you have low energy, which eventually results in a lack of health, then you don't have anything. You can't do anything without having a degree of energy behind it. Doesn't matter what you know, what type of contacts you have in the industry, all of your skill sets. If you don't have the energy to sit there and work in the studio, then you're not going to be able to achieve anything that you want to. So looking after yourself and nourishing your energy through those positive practices is the thing that's going to help you to circumvent that roadblock. And the stealth bomber, self-judgment. We talked about that quite extensively already, but there's another piece to it, which is comparison. And this is a trap that I see a lot of people falling into. And that is looking at your music and then looking at somebody else's music and noticing the differences. Now, it's good to look at other people's music. Invariably, most of us get started in the field here by being inspired by someone else's music. And that's good. That's a positive thing. It's good to listen to music and be inspired when you feel like it gives you energy and motivation. But the downside to that is when you write a piece of music and then you play it next to back with another piece of music that was one of the pieces of music that inspired you, and then you notice that yours isn't as good or as clean or as crisp or there's differences between the two, then that can be extremely demotivating and can drag you down a negative spiral. So comparison is a really common, pervasive roadblock. And I would highly encourage you guys to engage in a different type of comparison. So there's constructive comparison and then there's destructive comparison. Destructive comparison is building a track and then playing it alongside a mastered track from one of your favorite producers who's been producing for 10 times longer than you. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to hate your music. You're probably going to throw your track away. That's destructive comparison. Versus constructive comparison, which is maybe listening to a song that you really like from one of your favorite producers in the beginning, making some notes about what you like about it and getting some ideas and inspiration from it, and then forgetting that it exists and writing your song. And when you're done your song, instead of comparing your song that you just wrote to your favorite producer's song, instead compare it to a song that you wrote a year ago or 6 months ago or 5 years ago. It doesn't matter. Compare yourself to yourself. Don't measure yourself against somebody else, because everybody has music that's different. Everybody's on a different path. Everybody's been producing for different periods of time. And your best judgment, your best measuring stick for your own progress is to compare yourself to yourself. And if you do otherwise, you can get yourself dragged down this negative spiral of self-judgment and comparison. And you could wind up like my friend who just one day stopped making music. So that pretty much wraps us up. I just wanted to do a little plug here for Creative Mastery. A lot of the material that I've shared with you guys today is from my Creative Mastery course. This course is a course about finishing music. It's a course about feeling better about the music that you are producing. It's a course about cultivating a healthier relationship with your music and being able to produce music without being frustrated. It's a way of building your mental focus. It's a way of achieving a state of artistic flow. And it's basically the past 10 years of my life distilled down into 5 weeks. I've done 10 years of personal development, tons of reading, tons of one-on-one mentorship with a variety of different authors and coaches that are sometimes hard to find people. And I've taken the different pieces of knowledge from all of these courses and books and mentors that I've experienced, and I've distilled them down into just the core that's applicable for you guys. And really what I wanted to do is I wanted to get rid of a lot of the filler, because invariably when I took all these courses and read all these books, there's a couple of nuggets that are really good and really applicable for music. And then there's a lot of stuff that doesn't apply to you as musicians. So I took all of those little golden nuggets and gems and I gathered them all into a 5-week Creative Mastery course where you guys can ideally tap into the learning and the knowledge that I took 10 years to learn and condense that down into a 5-week period. It's an incredible amount of knowledge. You have to be really ready for the course, ready to take on some serious change in your lives. But it's been our most requested course that I've ever done. And it's been the highest rated course that I've ever done. And the testimonials and the reviews that have come in from the students who've partaken in it have been nothing short of amazing. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, come take a look at the Creative Mastery course on my site at vespers.ca. We're starting our first session this coming Tuesday on January the 13th. And would love to see you guys there on the course. It's a 5-week journey through this whole creative process. And if you guys are looking to set yourselves up for a really killer 2015, then this would be a great way to do that. All right. So we are finished for the day. I'm going to take another round of questions. And just want to talk to you guys about a couple of things. So one, for anybody who missed it, the recording of this session will be posted in the webinar backend on my site. It'll be posted on Wednesday, and you'll be able to view the full archived recording throughout the year. So it might be good for you to refer back to and check out. And that's basically it. I wanted to do this webinar to set you guys up really powerfully for your upcoming year and to show you some of the things that I personally do, some of my routines and processes that I've found really helpful in my music, and to hear about some of the unique challenges that you guys are encountering and to help you through them.